Hello and welcome. I am Madeline Silva, and I want to take a moment and record this video for you. So this is a little slideshow that I put together for one of my prospective clients that just signed up for a really long consulting package to help her launch herself into private practice. So she's a very prominent OBGYN medical doctor who's been working in the field for decades. She has a 4-month waiting list of patients coming into her practice where she is right now. And she's traveling across the world, speaking at major medical conventions. She's going to Italy, Mexico City, and San Diego just in the next couple of weeks. So really amazing woman. I'm feeling super honored to speak to her. And after we sat down and had our original conversation about her coming in and working with me and me helping her, stepping in as the chief operations officer for her clinic and really help her launch it. I wanted to create this slideshow for her to kind of show some of the mistakes that I see that doctors make. Now, I'm really fortunate that in this situation, I was actually invited in before she started opening her doors. Most of the time, I show up once the practice is almost on the brink of bankruptcy or, something else catastrophic is about to happen. And then finally, they pull me in as a last-ditch resort to save things. And at that moment in time, there's usually hundreds of thousands of dollars that's been invested into the business, and there's nothing I can do about that. That money's lost. And so it's really exciting for me to be working with somebody before those changes starts happening and before all those mistakes have happened. But I wanted to kind of go over this slide presentation with you because I think it can really help anybody else looking to jump from having a full-time position working in a hospital or a clinic or health management organization and really dreaming about having your own private practice where you get to practice the way you really want to and take care of patients the way you feel like is the right way to care for them. So let's get started. So one more thing I really want to say before we jump in. So I'm going to go over 5 different key mistakes that I see doctors making, but I also want to really point out something that most of the time, well, I would say like 100% of the time, really, doctors make these mistakes because they're inheriting the business model from the clinic or the health management organization that they're leaving. So they never owned a business for the most part. And they don't really know that that business model is a faulty business model for the kind of practice that they're looking to create. Most of them are leaving the health management organizations and the clinics and the hospitals because they're feeling really squeezed between the administration, which is pushing them to have shorter and shorter visits and do things a certain way that allows the administration to bill insurance for it so they can create a revenue stream that's steady. And on the other hand, they have the patients, and they realize that the patients have a different need and want from what they want from providers. So in a recent study, it was found that within 11 seconds, a patient gets interrupted in a traditional doctor's office. In an allopathic traditional medical model. 11 seconds before a patient gets interrupted when they're talking about what's going on for them. So that's a shocking stat. I was shocked to see that. And I would have to say it's not the doctor's fault, because what I know about doctors is that you have amazing hearts and you're really here to change the world and you want to make a difference in people's lives. Yet you're being squeezed in these situations where you can't really provide the care that you know your patients need. And this is usually the main reasons why these doctors step out of those traditional medical settings and want to start their own private practice. It's not really to make $1 million. Usually it's because they finally get to practice and take care of patients in a way that really feels good to them and the way they know they're going to be able to deliver their best care. But in the process of making that jump or taking that leap, oftentimes they just inherit that business model. It is faulty, that actually has to create this crazy revenue stream, right, from insurance billings. And these days, maybe you can get $75 for an office visit. Maybe it's $145 if you're lucky, right? You standard office visit. And if you're spending more than 10 minutes or 15 minutes with a patient, you really start losing money doing it for the long term. So I wanted to kind of go over this and talk to you a little bit about what it would look like to set up a practice that really works for you and how to break free from the business model, the only business model that that is really faulty and sets you up for failure once you step into private practice. So number one mistake is to charge per visit. So I want to show them a little bit of the math behind that. So for example, this provider, she wanted to work 3 days a week, and she spends about an hour or so for initial visits and longer, some follow-up visits, only 30 minutes. But for the most part, if she do a procedure or she needs to do something at all, usually it's a full hour with each patient. And so it's 96 hours or 96 appointments for 8-hour days, for 3 8-hour days. And, and I was saying, so her overhead, she has super low overhead. She ended up buying a building, and she has bootstrapped her way the last year or two to really get the equipment used. She bought it used oftentimes to bring in the equipment that she needed in her practice. And her husband was able to build it out for her. So she has done some really smart things in setting it up. But now it's sitting there. And so she has about $5,000 worth of overhead that's about to kick in. And just to cover her $5,000 overhead, she would need to sell, 96 visits at $52, right? A visit, which is like super low, but she will only bring in $5K. Now, if she also said that she wanted to take home about, her basic financial needs as far as paying the bills and just keeping it simple and kind of survival mode, I would say, would be $8,000 take home. And so we looked at, well, what would it take to then, cover the overhead and also have a little bit of take home? And that was the $13,000. And so, so 96 versus 136. So I think that's pretty much what you can expect from an insurance practice, but you would have to then have 96 appointments booked. Or if you wanted to make a little bit of extra, let's say you wanted to make 20,000, which again, for medical practice it's not very significant, right? That money goes so fast, as I'm sure many of you might know. But so 96 appointments for $209, right? Would mean, but filling 96 appointments and making 96 sales every single month just to barely make the ends meet, that's a lot, right? And so what I recommend that people do is that you really don't charge by your time or hour by hour or the features that you use to deliver your services. Instead, price your services based on a transformation that you provide. So, that's really what patients are going to pay you for anyway. They don't really 10 chiropractic visits or 10, lab tests and that sort of thing. But really, what are the results? What are the benefits? What is the transformation that you truly provide with your care? That's what's going to motivate people to pay you for your services. And in this specific example, this provider had an amazing process. Like I said, she does very unique pelvic exams with women. She's an OBGYN, and she has developed her own system for it. And it's just the most beautiful, I think, possibly every woman's dream, because we all have had horrible nightmare stories about going in for pelvic exams. And so she has this amazing protocol, and it truly is a transformation and incredibly unique. And so we were really looking at creating transformational packages for her. So that looks a little bit different. So for example, and we were going to sell them around $5,000, and we haven't quite figured out exactly what will all go in there, but she offers a lot of really unique things. So there will be some hands-on services that she offers in her practice. And then there will be some other additional services that she will offer, like some self-care protocols. She also is going to bring in an esthetician who's going to work with her clients, and a sexual expert who's going to come in and work with her clients. So she has a couple of other integrative technologies or integrative services that she's bringing into the practice. We haven't worked out all the details of the package. That's something that we're working on moving forward. But $5,000 seemed like a fairly good price. And so we're going to figure out how that all works. And yes, we're going to figure out, I like to do these hybrid packages with insurance where we utilize the insurance so the patient doesn't come in stressed out that they can't use their health insurance. But we do it in such a way that we are out of network. So we have the flexibility of charging out of pocket for the additional services that we offer that most likely insurance won't cover for. So there's this hybrid packages that we do that works really well, and I feel creates this win-win both for the patient and the provider, and so that you can actually charge what you need to charge in order to keep your doors open. So $5,000 per package seems quite doable, and so for one package, one sale, right, one package, if you sold one package a month, she'd be able to cover her overhead. If she did 2.5, she would cover her overhead and make a salary. And if she wanted to do a little bit of extra, if she just sold 4 packages, she would be able to make that happen quite easily, right? And that is such a different number than looking at that 96 visits, right? And so offering these transformational packages also means that oftentimes you can charge a little bit more. And really provide phenomenal value, of course. So the other thing that I find a lot of doctors do when they're transitioning out of that health management organizations is that they are overstaffing, right? In the hospital, you have somebody who checks people in, you have somebody who does the billing, you have somebody who does, all the other aspect of running the business, an administrator, a manager here, a manager there, or, lab specialists and x-ray specialists, and the list goes on and on and on. And when you open up your own practice, oftentimes the medical doctors that I work with feel like they don't know how to run a business, and that's the model that they've seen work, so they end up hiring tons of people in their practice, and oftentimes creates a lot of problems for them. So for example, it's very costly to have employees. So you end up working to pay their salary without really being able to pay yourself. So I had an example like that. I was working with a clinic here in Austin, and the husband and wife are both phenomenal doctors, and they were both working other jobs while also working in the clinic for free in order to create revenue to pay for the overhead and the salaries of the other people they had. And they weren't really able to draw a salary, even for 3 full years of being in the practice. They didn't make enough. Well, there wasn't enough over, I will say that, because they were making $880,000 a year in a clinic. They were having a healthy revenue stream, but they weren't taking home a lot. The net profit wasn't very high, right? So it didn't enable them to be able to pay themselves. The other thing that oftentimes because you haven't been used to hiring people and making sure that you're getting the right quality people, so you don't really know what qualities they need to have to be really good at the job that you're hiring for. And so oftentimes you end up hiring the wrong people, and those wrong people will oftentimes make the wrong decisions. So another thing that another client of mine did, they hired a manager to come in as a clinic manager to manage it because they knew that they were not managers. They were doctors first. They wanted a manager. And the bank, where they got their bank loan to open up the clinic, asked them to please have a manager on staff. So they did hire somebody, and she was been working in other mid-level clinics, or, well, not clinics, but companies and businesses. And she managed up to 25 plus employees. And she had some really great, solid experience. But she didn't have any experience in the clinical field or the medical field. And she was making some really clunky decisions along the way. So when I stepped in, I kind of have to rework those things. And that was a costly mistakes for their clinical owner. And you don't know how to train them, right? Because you haven't worked in you haven't worked in those positions, you haven't worked out those systems. So oftentimes you're going to end up paying more for people, and that oftentimes are going to be overqualified to do the job because you can't train them, so they have to do what you need them to do even before they get in, right? Or you don't really know how to be a leader for your team. It's really important, right? When you hire your own team, the person that they're going to come to when they have questions or things aren't working right, or they're struggling with getting paid an insurance claim, God forbid, they will come to you as the clinic owner and want it, as their boss and ask you questions. And if you don't really know how to respond to those questions, then they kind of at a loss of how to do their job, right? And so it's easy to then overqualify people. And also, if you don't have a way of really knowing how to make sure that they're doing their job right, because you don't really know exactly how it should be done, then you can also run into a lot of problems. So oftentimes people either end up micromanaging their team to the point where it drives them and their team crazy, or they completely let go and said, oh, I'm just going to let my team handle that part like they did when they worked in the health management organization. And now their team is kind of running rogue. And I see this a lot where literally $1 million practices are being handed over to the front desk, clinic manager. I'm putting apprentices over that because that's like, wait a minute. And, and that person is now making the decisions for the clinic. And that is a really risky business to do for your financials of your clinic. So, and both can really lead to disasters. And so you want to hire a team incrementally and strategically as your profit and need grows, right? So you can't just build the whole thing all at once without spending a tremendous amount of money. And then oftentimes people look to hire people here locally in their local market. And I've had phenomenal success outsourcing many tasks in the clinic. And I work a lot with people in the Philippines. Philippines have quickly become one of the biggest customer service oriented markets. And they do a phenomenal job in this arena. And when I had my practice management and billing company for 16 years, I transitioned 80% of my team over to the Philippines. And so at the time, I needed to hire quite a lot of people, and my budget was a little tight. And so the kind of people I was able to hire in my local economy was bartenders, cocktail waitresses, barbers. And then I would train them up on the job. And sometimes they were oftentimes very young, like in their 20s, maybe late 20s if I was lucky. And few of them have had any college degrees. So I was just, I was doing the best with these people, and they were doing a fair good job for me. But once I started working with people in the Philippines, I was hiring college graduates, people in their 30s that had professional careers at insurance company call centers and really understood my industry, and oftentimes were really mature and accountable and showed up with so much more resourcefulness than the people I've hired in my local economy. And it also allowed me to finally get the amount of people and support I've needed to really grow my business in a sustainable way. So there's a lot of different jobs like that in your clinic that you might not even consider, but you can really outsource quite easily and quickly. The other thing I see a lot of doctors doing is that wasting their money investing heavily in digital marketing or online marketing. And, I just talked to a clinic owner the other day, and, he had spent $8,000 to get all his, fancy systems built online. And then he was sitting in his clinic waiting for the people to come, but nobody was coming. And he was quite frustrated, as you can imagine. And so the online marketing world is okay. You want to have some online presence, but you want to be very strategic. And you want to utilize the right words to really draw people into your sphere of influence. And just having a good looking website is going to do nothing for you if you don't have traffic there, or if you don't really speak directly to the people that you can help the most. So there's a real art form in how to build a website, and you don't need a 20-page website. You need a simple 5 pages, maybe, with some very specific call to action in each page. And the language is the most important part of your marketing funnel and setting it up just right. So don't invest in tons of online marketing or somebody to cover, to take care of your social media. It's really important to have strategy behind it. It's not just about just putting content out there and hoping that will work. It's about strategy behind that. And the truth of the matter is that you really want to start to build your advertising locally and then expand out as your practice grows, because those are the people that are most likely to come to your brick and mortar business. And the truth is that the best, most effective way of attracting clients into your clinic is simple conversations, meeting people that you can help and having conversations with people. And of course, connecting with key referral partners that are willing to refer to you and support you. So those two things are going to way outperform anything you're going to do on social media. So just really want to say that the true and trusted is still working really, really well in the brick and mortar healthcare industry. Mistake number 4 is that a lot of doctors rely on their patients following you. So like this doctor, like I said, she has 4 months of a waiting list for people to come and see her in the clinic where she is now. But it is against the rules, of course, for her to take that. That's not her database. That's not her client base. It is the clinic where she's working. It's their patients, right? So she can't take that list and market to them, number 1. And number 2, there's lots of different things that make decisions for your patients on why they go to see you in that business or clinic location. So, it could have to do with insurance plans you're in or out of network with. It could have with that they bring in their kids there and their other family members to that clinic. It could be that it's closer to their home. And so even though you have this amazing relationship with your patients where you are right now, it's actually a little harder than you think to transition them into your clinic. Doesn't mean you can't, but again, you have to have some strategy behind how to do that. So one of my clients in one of my coaching programs, so she referred her husband, who is a financial advisor. So he's what I would call one of my outliners, meaning that I don't really work in a financial advisor industry, but every now and again, when I get a direct referral like that, I help people out. And so I took him on for a short little coaching package, consulting package to help him gain some traction. And what happened is that he had been building his business for about 1.5 years. And then his wife started working with me. In a couple of months, she had outperformed his business. And so he was like, oh, I probably need to talk to Madeline about this. So we connected. And the very first thing he told me is that, very similar to the doctor I'm talking about right now, he had been in financial advising, financial investing for decades, working in big corporate America, and had a very prestigious job. And he was servicing over 400 different people and really helping them invest in their money. They have high caseloads in that field. And so he thought, if he got just 20 of those people, which is like nothing, to come with him into his private practice, even though he had to wait a whole year before his non-compete clause was done, he felt like, of course, some of these people are going to come because I've been taking care of them for like 10 years. And the reality was that I think he only got 1 or 2 of them to come with him. And the other people were just not willing to change firms. Now, we're working on that because now we're giving him some words and some strategies of how to be a little bit more strategic in overcoming their concerns and objections when he talks to them. But you can't just expect that because you have a full caseload in a clinic, when you open up your practice, that those people are going to follow you. You're going to have to build that client base, and it's really important that you have a solid client attraction strategy in place before you open your business to support you in growing that practice. Mistake number 5 is that you're so used to really having the luxury of being a clinician first, and you spend all your time with your patients when you first open your clinic. And being a sole proprietor owner, or even if you have a corporation yourself, and you are self-employed, it requires you to wear quite a lot of different hats. And yes, you should absolutely hire people to help you implement strategies into your business. But in the beginning, you're probably going to have to do some of those tasks yourself. And you're going to need to focus a little bit on business development. You're going to need to focus on how to be a leader for your team if you hire team members. And if you just get into the tunnel vision of working just with patients, what oftentimes happens, and I see this all the time, is that some of the most brilliant doctors and healers that I know are the best kept secrets of their community, because they haven't spent a lot of time of really sharing their unique genius with their community that are in. And so nobody except their current patient load really know the amazing transformation that happens inside their practice. So you need to really break out from that norm, and that's a little bit outside your comfort zone potentially, but also knowing how to do it well, so that when people get to hear what you are up to and who you are, that they really lean in and want to come and work with you, and that it's exciting proposition for them. So how do you position yourself to really offer that level of enticement and not just stay inside your office practice walls? So here's some core values that I look at, and that's just really how I look at business and what I bring with me when I walk into a clinic's office. I believe you have to stay lean and mean, meaning that you want to keep your overhead as low as possible. And I'm sure you heard this before, and you're going to hear me say this again. It doesn't matter how much your gross is. What really matters is how much your net profit is. This is what I do. A lot of times, I actually don't work a tremendous amount with startup clinics. I take on very, very few of them in a year. But my majority is that I go into already existing clinics that are doing really well and very successful, and usually over $500,000 a year revenue, up to $2 million or so. That's like my sweet spot. And I have several employees, and they have a full-on clinic, and usually they have a full appointment. It's not like they have a shortage of appointments or patients. Oftentimes they're full, but they have very, very little profit margin. And even after years and years, decades sometimes, these providers don't have a lot to show for the hard work that I put into their business. And so that's what I do. I step in and help them to actually create revenue there. And I promise you, I have a guarantee of adding, 6 figures net profit, in just 12 weeks. And that's my actual guarantee for the clients I work with. And the reason I can do that is because so often, 99% of the time, is that clinics overspend on the wrong things and sometimes on the right things, but still overspend. So I really believe in staying lean and mean and reinvest in your business as you grow. And don't try to build all your brilliant ideas at once, right? And invest your time and resources in the right things at the right time. So how do you know what's the right things at the right time? There really are 5 stages in a business. And I'm going to go over that in a little bit and what those mean. But so you need to focus on different things in each stage to build your business strategically. And when you do it in the right order, it really creates its natural momentum, and it makes it quite, I wouldn't say necessarily easy, but at least there's a lot of clarity in what you need to focus your time and energy and resources on in each stage. So it makes it easier to make decisions. It makes it easier to not waste money on stuff that you're not quite ready for. And so that helps you to guide the process. I also believe that you need to build a business for where you want it to be. So use your vision as your compass. So most of the time, when doctors first open up their practice, They're kind of flying by the seat of their pants. They're creating the next thing and the next thing, and they're just responding to the fires and the urgency of just running a clinic. And they haven't really thought that far out. Or even if they had a full vision before they open a practice, once it's up, like start going, it's like it's a machine of its own, and they just kind of fall onto the hamster wheel and don't know how to get off. Or they build a business that really are for just putting out the fires and what they're dealing with right now, and it doesn't have the container or the possibility to really grow to the full capacity of the vision. So a lot of capacity blocks get built into the business structure, which limits the growth long term. Or they forget to focus on business critical activities. And in the beginning, in a startup stage, like I'm going to tell you in a little bit, the number one thing you want to focus on is to get clients in the door, right? Focus on business critical activities. But it's different business critical activities at each of the 5 stages that you want to make sure you put your attention to. Your business grows in direct proportion to how much you are willing to grow. So that's my personal philosophy, and also something that I absolutely seen in my own business, and I see with my clients' business all the time. Being in business for yourself is definitely a learning edge, especially if you haven't, you worked as an employee your whole life and now you open your very first practice. That's going to be some growing edges, right? There's going to be a little bit of maybe even some growing pains, right? To learn new things. But the more you're willing to stay open and willing to grow and learn new stuff, the more your business will grow as a result. And don't be an island. So this is something I used to tell my team all the time, that it's a team effort, and you really, lean on your team, ask for help when you need it. And I think so often in the medical field, you as doctors, you step into your practice and you're all alone in there. Even though you have a team and everybody else there, you are the one driving force, and you don't have enough support for you to make it happen. And I think oftentimes it's really overwhelming when you realize, when you step into the clinic and you're the owner, that all those people that you might have hired and your clients, everybody's looking to you for guidance. And it can feel a little bit overwhelming because sometimes you don't even know what direction to take the next step. So really making sure you have the support, both peers around you that are trying to do what you are doing, or already done it, even better, right? But to have a real support team around you. I myself, I haven't gone a day in my businesses. I started 5 businesses on shoestrapping, right? Really kind of just scrapping by. 5 businesses, I sold 2 of them for top dollars. And I haven't gone a day without having a business mentor to help me along the way, who have been where I've been before. I think that's so important. This is a tough thing to do. This is not easy. It's definitely worthwhile. It's super worthwhile. And it's the most amazing thing once you get there and you really get to create this dream. But so often people get disappointed once they're in it because it's not as easy. Even though they knew it was hard, it's way harder than I imagine. And it's usually way harder than they imagine because they don't have the right support to help them to figure out what to do with their time and money and resources to help their business grow. So the other thing is to lead your business by the numbers and not your fleeting emotions. So knowing what numbers to track in your business, to know if it's on, if it's actually growing and it's moving in the direction that you want it to be, is really important. Because it's really easy to only do marketing when your numbers are down and you don't have enough clients. And then when there's an influx of clients, then you stop marketing because you're busy with clients. I see that all the time, and that creates this built-in ebb and flow of cash flow that just really creates so much struggle for so many doctors. So finding the numbers to track in your business and being really consistent with that, and allow your emotions to be, you don't have to fix them. You can have up and down. We all have ups and downs and bad days, but to rely on the numbers to guide you really will help you to not feel the stress. So this is kind of the 5 steps that I use to what I call flip the freedom switch on your healthcare practice. And I just mean a freedom switch to me. So I personally believe that entrepreneurship has been one of the most amazing ways for me to really have freedom in my life, to be able to travel, to be able to set my own schedule, to be able to really do the kind of work that I feel has deep, deep meaning to me and really make the kind of difference that I really want to make. And so that's really important to me. And that's why my business name is Freedom Switch. And what it's really is about for me is to create that for you too, that you can have that. Literally should be as easy as flipping a switch and be able to step into that amazing experience. So I wanted to take you through this. So this is where we go into the 5 business stages. So the first thing is about, I would probably say it's probably at least 12 weeks. But this is where we go through the dream up stage. So the dream up stage, I would say a lot of doctors I know a lot more doctors who are thinking about starting their dream practice than doctors that actually do it. And I think that might only be like the 1%ers who do it and do it really well. And so the dream up stage is usually where people get the most tripped up. And the dream up stage, it's exactly what it says it is where you sit around and dream up and create the business plan and how it is that you're going to create and what it is that you want and you vision and what your dream practice would look like, and you're thinking about all those things. And the biggest thing to focus on in a dream up stage is to not get stuck just waiting for everything to be perfect before you take the leap. It's easy to get stuck there because it's definitely a leap to open up the doors to make it happen. And many, many doctors get stuck just sitting by the sidelines rather than joining forces. So not that long ago, well, I would say last year, I had a conversation with a medical doctor, and she had been in clinical practice, pediatrician, for decades, and both her and her husband was working in her clinic, and they were doing quite well. They have a full patient base, and they were doing quite well, and this is how they've been, paying the bills and living quite well for years and years, but it's very busy and working on many, many hours. And she had this dream of starting a holistic pediatric practice, working with children with ADHD holistically. And, so we had this conversation. She was asking for advice. And I told her, I would recommend that she would sell her practice so that she would have the finances to then focus 100% on this new venture that she wanted to create. Because it's very hard to split your time between, holding up a full-time practice over here and starting a little satellite office to build this side business on. I find that side hustles rarely ever, really becomes the full-blown thing. And that was her game plan, right? That she could build this business up on the side to take over the revenue stream of her clinic. And so and she just couldn't see how to sell her business because her husband told her that, healthcare practices, you can't sell them anymore and stuff like that. And so she never did it. And about a year later, I talked to her again, and she was like, oh my God, I wish I had listened to you, because it was absolutely impossible for me to do both. And so she had, at that point, let go of her satellite office, and she was back again working full-time in her clinic. And 6 months after that, I talked to her again, and now she had decided that she's going to walk away from her clinic. She's closing the doors on it, and she's taken a full-time job out of state to work to hopefully be able to save some money so that one day she will be able to open up her dream practice. Stories like that are heartbreaking to me. I wish that she would have had the trust in me to help her sell her practice so that we could have funded her dream practice rather than just walking away after putting in decades and decades into a business. She just closed the doors one day. And now she's still working in corporate America now. How is that going to affect how she feels? I'm curious to hear what happens in the next 6 months, and I hope I get the opportunity to help her. So that's the dream up stage. And then the startup stage is when you actually open up the doors and you start seeing patients in your clinic. And the biggest mistake in the startup stage that happens is that people really burn themselves out, because you tend to burn your candles in both ends to really get the rocket up in the air. A lot of energy and movement that needs to happen. So you need to be strategic in this phase to really have a well laid out plan that you know is going to generate a result fairly quickly. So when I work with clients, so the first 12 weeks, we really focus on figuring out what it is we're creating, and it's all based on the doctor's game plan, what it is that they want as the end result. I don't walk in with an agenda because, frankly, it's not, this is not my dream practice. I want to create what their dream practice. Nothing makes me happier than seeing a client's eyes totally light up when they realize they really can have it all, and they realize it's a possibility. The dream they've had all along is actually possible. Nothing makes me happier than seeing that light in their eyes. So that's really, really exciting to me. And so that's what we spend time doing, the dream up and start step, really launching the business. And within those 12 weeks, depending on when we launch, right, we should start seeing some ROI, meaning that they should start actually be able to bring in enough money to cover the bills and what I call the basic expenses. Basic financial goals just means you have your basic covered, you have your bills covered, you're not in survival, you're not struggling to survive, but you have your basic covered. There's not a whole lot left over for luxury, but you have the basics covered. So that's what we want to see in the ROI zone right there. And this is really where we lay the business fundamentals and we create your client attraction plan. It's what I call create the momentum for the practice. Then we step into the team up. So this is no more where as the business starts growing, we are now ready to get some support into the clinic to really allow you to have the support to grow more. If you don't bring somebody in, oftentimes you're going to end up being at capacity, meaning you're not going to be able to grow anymore because you as the business owner becomes the capacity block in your own business. It's a little bit like a plant. You buy a plant in a small little pot, and at a certain point, it's just going to stop growing until you replant it in a bigger pot. It's very similar with your business. You need to shift the business model along as you grow your business so that your business can continue to grow, or you're going to run into capacity block, which is an exhausting roller coaster on its own. So we want to start adding in some really great team, and we want to, in the scale up, really looking at automation. So this is where we create your turnkey practice. So we want to practice in a business where what I call we plan for random intelligence. So anybody should be able to walk in and take over from anybody else in the clinic just following the systems laid out. And it should be fairly easy to follow in somebody else's tracks. When you have a turnkey practice, it just eliminates the stress when somebody leaves, when you have to train somebody new, you have the training team onboarding all set up, you have your hiring and training process all taken care of. You have procedures and systems. All of this is all laid out. And that creates such sense of relief and peace of mind for the owner. And you don't have to worry. You're not constantly racing to put out fires. You get a peace of mind. And the other thing in the scale up, we're really looking at automation. So how can we really grow the business and leverage the people that we have on the team and maximize the productivity and the net profits of that practice and really scale up the revenue centers. And sometimes we add in some group programs, some to deepen the education and also have a broader reach and create a little bit of an additional income source. And once we've gone through this, and so this whole process, and then the rock on stage is really where freedom really takes off, and where you're really making 6-figure plus profits, and you have vacation freedom. So many providers struggle because taking time away from their business means they're not there to make money and seeing patients, and when they're not there making money, they lose money every time they take time off. And oftentimes they kind of lose patience and maybe even momentum in the growth of the business because they're not there creating it. And so we want to create, we want to use your team and your system to create this turnkey practice so that you can really have vacation freedom. You can step away without things falling apart. And to really have your dream team that has your back, in my personal experience in business, having the right team is the greatest asset you could ever have in your business. If you have a team that got your back and really knows what needs to happen in your business, you have peace of mind stepping away. So that's something that we do. And so we take people through from dream up all the way to rock on and really turn up the volume of their business. It takes about 12 months. So this is a longer process for sure. And we work quite hard during this year. This is all in process. You can stretch it out if you wanted to, a couple of years, that's fine. No big deal. There's no shame in that whatsoever. But when we do it together, we can get it done fairly quickly because this is something I've done over and over again. So it's fairly easy for me now to step in and guide the providers that I work with through this process. And the whole guarantee is that we're going to put you on a trajectory to add a minimum of 6 figures in net profits in your first year. So that's the guarantee that we make happen. So let's look at these financial projections for this specific provider that I was working with, because I think it's really important to see what's possible and really look at it in black and white. So again, I upped the overhead from the earlier slides, you might have noticed, because I added in just an extra $1,000 for just some miscellaneous stuff that wasn't there yet. And that might be even a little bit more. We'll see as we go ahead, but I think that's a fairly accurate overhead profile for her. Again, very, very low overhead overall, $6,000. That's a lean and mean practice. That's where we want to keep it. That's fantastic. So we're going to look at the startup revenue stream. So this is when she's just starting up. She's more solo practitioner. So we talked about the 4 transformational packages that she would sell once a month. So that's only 1 package once a week. So fairly easy, not crazy numbers, right? Now this doctor, like I said, she travels around the world educating people and teaching them about the pelvic exams that she does and the protocol that she developed. And every lecture she does, doctors come up to her and says, can you train me on what it is that you do? And she hasn't yet. And so I feel like this is a really untapped revenue stream for her. And she also really want to create a movement with the work that she does. And she would like to brand these clinics and really create a network of these clinics across the states. So it's really exciting. And so we said, well, if one doctor come to your clinic and work with you for 3 days, one-on-one, and you teach them the whole protocol, you probably could charge them $15,000. I don't think that's outrageous. I think that's pretty doable. You already have doctors asking you for this. And so let's say you sell one of these doctors, 1 package a month. That's it. So you work a 3-day weekend once a month. And so she would be able to bring in $35,000 a month. And that would be $420,000 per year. Now that's more than twice what she's making now in the clinic where she's at, right? And she could make that right away. The next stage is to team up revenue streams. And this is when we are scaling it up a little bit. And you can see we've just added a little bit more sales, not even that much. We'd added in 1 more clinic package. So she would sell, instead of 4 transformational packages, she would sell 5. And we decided that once she kind of figured out the protocol of how to take a doctor through the trainings a couple of times, that she could probably have 3 doctors there at the same time. So it's not 3 weekends, it's still just 1 weekend, but she's having 3 doctors getting the one-on-one training and still charging the $15,000. And so now we have $70,000 revenue stream with those revenue centers. And that's $840,000 per year. So we just doubled it. Now, I believe that we can create a $70,000 a month revenue stream fairly easy in the first year. Now, this doctor is unique in some ways because she has a lot of the foundational pieces in place. But it's, these are some ways, and it's not crazy numbers. We're not talking about hundreds of people that she has to bring in. It's nice round numbers. They're small numbers. It feels doable. And that's the whole goal. It should feel like, hey, I can do this. These numbers make sense. And these are the revenue goals that we can see happen. So that's the end of the slide presentation. I hope this was really helpful for you. And if you're interested in having a deeper look, into what you can do to maybe up the profit margin of your current business, or if you are thinking about taking this leap and you want some support in figuring out what your unique numbers would be and how you could set up the business model for your practice, feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to have a quick chat with you and see if there's anything I can do to help you. So I hope this was really helpful, and I'll talk to you guys soon.